Yo, what's up, everybody? Rage Cage 20 here, and welcome to the tale of the Destorians. Now, I got this is gonna be a prequel to the actual event because I got a lot of things to talk about, and you'll find out as we go along why this would need a prequel. Because pretty much, if there's any questions that arise, I can just point people back to be like, go check out the prequel. This part 0 here. Go check out this and I'll answer it for you. Now, tell the Destorians might be a little confusing. You will find out eventually if you continue to watch through this, what have you. But as a just a warm up here, another reason why I'm making this. There's several years ago, I had about a 2-year campaign with a group of, at the time, friends that went through the full Storm King's Thunder campaign, storybook campaign. Here, let me too much light. Storm King's Thunder, created by Wizards of the Coast, Chris Perkins and all that good stuff. I got that book because I was going to help my wife at the time, my ex-wife, and a friend. They were just like, hey, we want to play D&D. Will you DM for us? And so I started practicing being a DM and whatnot. And then when I was with a group of friends and we were playing D&D and whatnot, one of our campaigns got on hold. Then we started another campaign. It wasn't going too well. And so I was like, hey, I'm working on a campaign. Maybe we could try running it. And so we did. We went through the entire story, and while I do not associate with these people anymore, and I'm just saying this just in case one of them happens to find this video, because any of them would see the name Destorian and wouldn't know what that means. Just in case they stumble upon this video, because they did know that I made YouTube videos. Just note that while I do not associate with these people anymore, I still absolutely love most of them. One of them that was in this group, not a huge fan of. However, that's not important. I'm going to stay completely neutral and not let any personal feelings come up or anything. Because the important thing at the end of the day is we created an amazing adventure, an amazing story. And I feel like this story should be told. I don't remember every bit detail, but I remember a lot of it. So I still feel like this story should be told, and I will remain respectful to all those who were involved, despite any personal feelings that may have occurred. So, welcome. I really wanted to do this story because I feel like not only that the story should be told, but I feel like I could also have a unique spin on a D&D story, because most stories that you can see on D&D or on YouTube, most D&D topics and stories and stuff you're going to see are either people playing a story or people going over like tips on DMing, or just funny, haha, anyone who's been in DM group, this, like, oh, when your players decide this and stuff. I don't think there's a lot. There might be a handful out there that occasionally occurs, maybe small bite sizes or whatnot, but I don't think there's a lot of stories that are told through the DM's eyes. I don't think you get a look into what the DM's thinking, how they're planning certain things and whatnot. Because, like, can you imagine, like, after a Critical Role campaign is done, if Matt was to go back through and like explain, like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I was thinking at this moment. I thought they were going to do this, but they didn't. So all of this was improv, and I just started building off of it. Like, how cool that would be. It kind of might a peek behind the curtain might ruin some of the magic and whatnot. So not everyone might be interested in it. But can you imagine what it'd be like to know exactly what was thought and what was planned and whatnot? So I thought that would be an interesting, unique spin on this. So not only can I just tell this story and go through all the Storm King's Thunder story, because it's an amazing campaign story. You should definitely check it out if you haven't, even if it's just to get the book and read through it. It's really fucking cool. But also to tell the story this amazing adventure and crazy and chaotic in a lot of instances adventure that some friends of mine went through, ex-friends, and I went through, but also be able to have a unique perspective of, this is what I was thinking, these are the choices I made, these are mistakes that I made, and possible outcomes that I thought could have happened, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, this will also have little bits of kind of maybe DM tips of this is mistakes that I made, don't make these mistakes, and possible maybe what I should have done differently, but also a way for maybe D&D enthusiasts for us to have conversations and comments and whatnot, which will happen later in this episode. By the way, there'll be chapters. Skip to different chapters if you want. Just know if you're lost, maybe go back to a different chapter if you feel like you missed something. But yeah, I think all those things coming together will make a very interesting story and whatnot. Now, with that being said, I mentioned this in a previous 800 subscriber video, but I'm going to mention it again for those of you who did not watch that. I wanted to do this one pre what production value that I want to achieve, so that you can see the before and the after, but also to describe to you why I'm waiting to make this. I want this to be a higher production value and editing level than what you see here, than me just talking to a screen. I want to be able to get new editing software. I'm looking for new editing software so I can add stuff in, like maps of the locations, pictures that are in the book of maybe description of what people look like, what maps look like, what areas look like. You know, I want to be able to add all that stuff in, pictures of monsters, monster stats and stuff to have on the screen. I actually want to make this more engaging, more exciting, you know. At the same time, I want to change my lighting. I don't want it just to be this old ass fucking orangish, hueish light kind of thing going on. I want to get some lights in the back and whatnot, along with the light in front of me here. So we can get some good lighting in here, maybe in some mood lighting, you know, setting D&D, campaigny, dungeony, you know, feel to it. Who knows? We'll see what happens. And I also want to get some pictures and stuff, some like video game posters, pictures, oil paintings, or very cool oil painting. I want to see if I can get my hands on. Get that all in the back so we have some scenery and stuff. You know, I want it to be a better atmosphere and production value than what my average videos are. So I think that would be really cool. I could take it to the next level. Now, let's go over just a small little bit of house rules and stuff that was in, like kind of what you maybe expect to see. Also, I wanted to go through some changes and stuff, a little bit of the storyline here and there, but we'll talk about that in a second. I'll give a preamble for that here in a second. However, house rules. So this pretty much was a Pathfinder campaign. I think Pathfinder is, I mean, first edition, because when we started this, second edition was not a thing, and second edition didn't become a thing until kind of near the end of the campaign. So first edition of Pathfinder. I think I like Pathfinder a lot more than fifth edition. Fifth edition to me is a little bit kind of hold your hand. Like, don't get me wrong, I like fifth edition because it made it more accessible, more easier to understand, and brought it to more people, because more people should be playing Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like there should be D&D groups everywhere. Like, it should be easy to get into a D&D group, and I love that fifth edition made that available. And I take some rules, or maybe just house rules of Matt Mercer. I don't know, because I haven't looked at the 5th edition player's handbook and stuff. I haven't really gotten into that very much. But I've taken a few rules because I do like some of the simplifications that 5th edition did. However, character creation is where 5th edition just fucking lost me. If you go to Pathfinder, there's so many different characters and subclasses and stuff of those characters. Like, you could have like 5 rogues in a group, and each of them would be very different rogues and play very differently. You know what I mean? In 5th edition, it's you have your character, you have 2 or 3 talent trees. Choose. Feats? There's like a handful. You know what I mean? It's so super dumbed down, especially when it comes to character creation. That's just like, it's hard to get a unique character gameplay wise. Like, sure, you can have completely different backstories and they play completely differently, but like, you're picking, like, if you pick a barbarian, you're picking one of like 2 or 3 barbarians. No wiggle room for change. And that's really lame to me. Pathfinder is just fucking open with just probably too much customization, but I really like that. I really, really enjoy that. But Pathfinder can be a lot to digest because, as it's said in Critical, there's a lot of floating modifiers and stuff. Like, you cast haste, you kind of have to write down what haste does in Pathfinder because you get so many bonuses to so many different things. It can be really hard to keep control of, while as 5th edition they've really made it a lot simpler and more confined, so I get it, you know. But pretty much the house rules that we kind of switched around and kind of how we did certain things in here. Some are important, some are not. But mostly it's just following 5th Pathfinder. Little minor things of 5th edition here and there. But for hit points, the one thing that's always bothered me about hit points, and this is part that we can maybe communicate in the comments and whatnot, and you think like, oh, this is how I do it. I'd love to learn new things and maybe figure out the best way to do some of these things that I have thought of. But for hit points, I've seen both. You know, you roll for hit points, whatever the dice is, plus your con mod. That's how much hit points you get. I don't really like that because there could be situations where if you just roll shit, a mage, a wizard could have more HP than a barbarian. You know what I mean? If you just roll a 1 and you have like a +3, +4 to your con, and like a wizard has like a +2 to a con and rolls a 4, or no, it would be a 6 in Pathfinder. That's 3.5 I was thinking of. Rolls a 6 plus like 2, so they get an 8 while the barbarian gets 5 hit points. Like a wizard could have more health than a barbarian. I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? You know, obviously there's toughness and stuff like that, feats that you can get to try to help that, but like, bruh. So another rule I've seen is just like, you just take half your hit dice plus your con every single level, which is better. Like, it's more guaranteed that you're gonna get at least a good chunk, you know. But like, you kind of, I didn't really like that methodology either, because you were just kind of locked in to getting the same amount of hit points every single time, you know. So I kind of came up with a hit point rule that's like, you get at least half, and then you roll half of your hit dice. So like, if you're, say you're a barbarian, you're guaranteed to get 6 hit points, and then you roll a d6, which is half their hit dice, which is a d12. You roll a d6 and you add that on plus your con. So no matter what, if you roll a 1, you're at least getting 7 HP. So like, you're at least getting your upper half of your hit die plus your con mod. And if you roll a 6, if I think I had most of the time, like if it was an uneven dice, like, you know, if it was like a d3 or something, you know, if you rolled max, you got max. If you rolled what technically would be considered max or something like that, you would have to roll again to confirm, kind of thing. But it's a little nitty gritty in there. But yeah, I kind of like that one a lot better, because like, you're at least guaranteed to get half your hit dice, even if you roll a 1, which could suck as a barbarian. You're at least guaranteed to get 7 plus con, so you're at least gonna get a bunch of health, you know, which is good, because the more health you give your players, the more damage you can do. You know, the more crazy shit you can just throw at them. So I think that's fun. So that's kind of how I do hit points. I would love to hear how you guys do hit points and whatnot. I like the auto crit thing, because in Pathfinder it was confirmed crit. I don't know if this is 5th edition, just how Matthew Misha does it. I don't really watch other people, so I don't know. But I love the auto crit thing. If you roll a nat 20, you crit. Now, of course, that can be abused a little bit in Pathfinder if you get like a rapier or a scimitar or something that has a higher crit range, and then you get the feat to increase your crit range. Then people auto critting from like a 15, 16 to 20, which can be a little rough. But you know, it is what it is. The one thing I hate about Pathfinder, which really sucked, is that you rolled a nat 20. It's just like, oh, do I crit? It's like, well, roll again to see if you confirm the crit. You know, if you hit them and then you roll 1, it's like, okay, well, I guess I still hit. You know, it takes that moment like, oh, dude, a 20, to be like, oh, well, I guess it's not then. You know, so I don't like that about Pathfinder. I don't like the confirming and whatnot. So just you roll a crit, you crit. Whether it be attacks or, you know, ability checks, saving throws, etc. Like, I like the auto crit, so I kept that. Spellcasting, this is one I still have not been able to find out how to balance, but it would drive me. Preparing spells I don't like, which especially for Pathfinder kind of ruins certain other classes that, like, their thing is they don't have to prepare spells. But it's just like, to me it's just like, well, you have to prepare your spells, you have to choose which spells you can cast on the day, which to me is just like, do you pick fighting based spells and, like, you don't really get to have fun role playing with spells, or, you know, might not have anything for situational, like, environmental spells, or do you choose environmental spells and, well, you're nerfing yourself for combat? I don't like to have to choose between the two, so I kind of just made it like, you can cast whatever spell. I was also even trying to, but this is more like 3.5. I don't know if Pathfinder has as many of these spells, so it kind of just fixes it if they can just cast any spell. But I was also trying to think, like, certain spells, like, you know, maybe like grease or something. If you just want to grease a wall for funsies, that shouldn't count as one of your spell slots. However, if you decide to use grease in combat, that would count as one of your spell slots. I didn't implement that in this campaign, but, like, I've been debating on how to make that work, you know? Because it should be like, well, I don't want to waste a spell slot because I might need it for combat, but, like, I kind of want to do, like, I just kind of want to turn some mud into dirt or something for fun. You know, for roleplay aspect. You shouldn't have to expend a spell slot and then be fucked later. You know, so I'm trying to figure out how to make that work. Have, like, a separate, like, role-playing spells per day that's, like, significantly, like, maybe a quarter of what your normal spells per day kind of thing is. I don't know. Discussions and comments. We'll see how we can make it work. But pretty much spellcasting is you can cast whatever spell you want, which gets a little ridiculous up in the 9th level spells for, like, clerics and stuff, but, like, you know, maybe there's ways you can. But also for auto crits, there is also feats that, like, extend your like, make it so if you crit, you automatically crit. And we had to do some, like, household switches of, like, okay, well, if you take that feat, it'll mean something different that is also beneficial and whatnot. And also there might be, like, class abilities and stuff that interfere with that crit rule, so you kind of have to find a happy medium to that. Just keep that in mind. Also, our characters were Gestalt characters. If you don't know what Gestalt is, it means you're 2 classes in one. So you level up 2 classes at the same time. The reason we did that is because originally when we started, we had 3 players, and Storm King's Thunder, especially in Chapter 2, which we'll go over a little bit in this video, only a tiny amount, is really hard for a group of 3. Even when you get there at level 5, it can be extremely hard for level 3 or for just 3 characters. So someone suggested Gestalt. I looked into it. It seemed a little broken and overpowered to me at first, but then I was just like, but if you think about it, like, sure, you get the best of the base attack bonus from one group. That's it could be a little strong for certain ones. You get the best of the saving throws from one of that class. That's also pretty strong. But when it all comes down to it, you still only get the same action economy. You still only get 1 action, 1 movement, and a bonus. That's it. So, yes, you can do all these extra stuff, but you have to choose which one you do still. So it seemed balanced enough. So we started out Gestalt, but then once we started getting, like, 5 or 6 people, Gestalt got a little fucking nuts. But at the same time, it's just a balancing thing. Like, yeah, they're crazy, but you can make that because of that. And there's a lot of, I have so many notes and shit in here about enemy base stack bonus, hit points, damage, all that. I had to modify a fuckload of shit. but we'll get into that when we get to the characters and the enemies and stuff. So while the players might be a lot stronger, especially when you get up to the higher levels, because they Gestalt, you can make enemies stronger, which you'll see a lot of that occurring. But also, you can make enemies Gestalt as well. Customization can be a lot of fun that way. But I wouldn't do it unless you had to, because it gets pretty ridiculous. Which is another thing about Pathfinder that is like, it gets a little crazy, which we'll talk about here in a moment with how I handle damage reduction, because I really want to know how other people handle damage reduction, because I've never asked anybody this before, or how they change stats and whatnot. But in Pathfinder, what I like what they did about 5th edition. There we go. I guess, might just be, yeah, okay. I can't hear myself. 5th edition, they simplified everything. So it's like, even when you're crazy high level, a really good roll is probably anywhere between like 20 to 30, right? If you are really high on a skill check or whatnot, it's probably going to be around 20 to 30. For Pathfinder, especially with perception checks, for some of the characters, it literally became they rolled a 2 or 3. It's like, yeah, I got like a 40 on perception. You know what I mean? Like, it really started, it might be a little bit of exaggeration, but it really started to get pretty fucking ridiculous. So Pathfinder, at a certain point, it just kind of blows up and gets crazy. So you kind of have to do crazy, challenge CRs and DCs. There you go. Crazy DCs and stuff like that. So for damage reduction, especially for the final bosses and stuff, because we had a 2-weapon fighter that pretty much, if they got to get every single attack hit with power attacking and all their bonuses and stuff, they could easily probably do 200 to 300 damage in a turn, just one turn, right? Even through standard like 5, 10, 15 DR, like they're still doing like 200 to 300 damage in a turn. So the way I handle damage reduction, which is a little cheap, but it's like, it's either you have to, I feel like you have to, I mean, I would love to know what other DMs out there do. If you have any advice of it, what do you think would be a good idea, or what you've done personally, what's really helpful. It was either the final boss had to have like 100,000 health, which is crazy, because even upgraded health, like the highest health that like a CR 25 or something would probably have, is around 800 to 1,000. So unless I had to give them like 100,000 health, or had to do something to whittle that damage down a little bit, so it wouldn't be like a 2 or 3 round final boss fight. What I did for damage reduction is I took whatever the number of each hit, I reduced by half. And then I added the damage reduction on there. I don't know if that, I mean, that you hear that's like, that's kind of fucked up to your players. Because the thing is, like, they don't know. Like, it's kind of fucked up. And just like, oh, well, I'm not really doing all the crazy stuff. Like, I'm still letting you do all the crazy stuff that you're doing. You think you're doing like slashing up hundreds of damage, dude, I'm fucking badass and stuff. But, I'm really halving that number and then adding the DR on top of that. So you're still doing your badass and you do tons of damage and you're fucking it up and stuff. It's just, it's a way to make it so they don't die in 2 rounds. Like, so you don't kill them, fucking just nuke. There you go. Nuke the final boss in like 2 rounds. You know what I mean? So like, if anyone has how they did it, or if that's how you're supposed to do it, I don't fucking know. Or if they just give the boss like 1,000,000 fucking HP and it's like, all right, go to town. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do it? Obviously, none of the players ever knew that I did that. Only one person who was just observing, I told, because they were looking at the math that was happening. Like, I was just like, I'll tell you later. But yeah, that's pretty much it for kind of house rules and how I do certain things. Some important to the story, some not. But I would love to hear Also there's also a glimpse. We're about to get to a glimpse of kind of maybe some of the discussions that we'll have during the chapter and whatnot here. But yeah, if you have any advice on the certain subjects that we covered, I would love to hear it. I would love to know what I could maybe do better and or differently to help with that. So what I wanted to do in this video, the most important part of this video, besides explaining a few things to either people watching this who were part of it, and or people who are going to be watching and be like, why would I want to hear just the narration of the story instead of watching it being played? Well, this is why. But one of the main things I want to go through here is I want to touch on a few of the points, the things that I disagreed with initially on how the Storm King's Thunder was done, and how I might either change it differently to either the way they wanted, they suggested it to be done. Like obviously, as everyone in D&D knows, and even the people who create the stories of D&D knows, nothing's set in stone. You can change all of this if you want. Like this is just a guide, This is just a suggestion. So obviously, changing all this stuff is probably exactly what they assumed would happen, anyways. But what I might follow their guidelines on, maybe change it up even a little bit more, and what have you. So there's gonna be some spoiler alerts. So if you do not want to know the storyline of, or any spoilers potentially in the storyline of Sword King's Thunder, you just want to be surprised by all of it, the video's done after this. So go ahead, you can stop now. Go ahead and stop now. But we're gonna go through a few of the changes and stuff, and how I maybe would do it differently with less railroading in the future. Now, if you're still following me here, what is railroading? So pretty much if you're playing like a video game and there's a very linear path that you follow and the game doesn't really separate, that is one style of playing a game. Now, if you're in an open world, but there's certain parts that it's just like, no, we're not going to let this be open world. We're going to make you follow this path. That's railroading. D&D in general, in theory, is an open world kind of game. However, much like a train stuck on a tracks and can't go anywhere else, there are instances where you can kind of railroad people. Now, sometimes it's good, especially like if a D&D group is lost and they're just like, we don't even know what to do. You can be like, you can have an NPC come out and be like, hey, I need you to do this. We go this way now. Follow this path, to kind of get them back on track. It can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing. Sometimes you want your characters to explore and be more free and whatnot, and so just holding their hands like, no, you have to go this way, can be a bad thing. It can be used for both. For which one this would be, I would say is up to you for what I did personally. Now, one of them I would agree. The rest I would say is open to interpretation. But let's go through. I don't know if you can see. I'll move it forward here. The chapter guideline here, the adventure flow chart, if you will. So, one of the major things in here, I'll put this down here so I don't have to hold it the whole time. That'd be good. That'd be better. Get my water away from it. One of the things that I did not agree with, it has kind of suggested levels all the way throughout here, and by the time you get to level 12, they suggest what level you should be to fight an ancient blue dragon as level 10. Now, obviously, that would probably CR 20 to 25. That's level, even a group of 5 or 6 adventurers at level 10, that's too low. You're going to get fucking destroyed. So their answer to that is you're supposed to take these potions. I think the giants give you these potions and whatnot that will turn you into giant size and give you this incredible strength so you can overcome the final boss and whatnot. And for me personally, that when I read that, I was like, I just kind of want them to be a high enough level to beat the final boss. You know what I mean? I don't want them to have to be like, oh, you're not strong enough to beat him. Take these potions. Now you're strong enough. That to me just felt a little, and it still does. I don't know if I would change that, but I don't think I would have them at level 20 to fight the final boss. I've never been in a campaign where that ever finished. First off, I never got to finish any of the campaigns I've ever been in, but I've never gotten people to level 20 before. I wanted to see what it was like to get to level 20. Now, I would probably finish this campaign not at level 20. So that it would be a bit of a harder fight. But There you go. And if they wanted, like, oh, I want to see my characters get to a certain level to do certain things, then be like, okay, maybe it would add additional side quests and or stuff at the end of the campaign that I could add on and whatnot. But yeah, I still don't agree with that, and so I would think maybe between level 15 to 18 is probably where I would have the group at the end. I might have to nerf the dragon at the end final boss, which is not a dragon. Well, spoilers, you know, you already got the spoiler alert. Well, I already told you what it was. So. But yeah, that's a spoiler, but I'm not gonna share anything else because that'd be a bigger spoiler. But if you're already here and you're not afraid of spoilers, then you probably already know how the storyline goes. But probably between 15 to 18, even if I had to nerf the final boss a little bit, you know, it'd probably be where I'd try to aim them to be getting here if I was to run this campaign again. Now, going back to the beginning and moving forward. So chapter 1, it also suggests that you can do any other kind of chapter 1 in any other published book or whatnot, and just kind of skip the whole chapter 1 sequence. I really, really like chapter 1 in this book. I think chapter 1 is an amazing opening chapter to this book, and I don't think should be skipped. I mean, you can, but wouldn't want to skip it, is what I'm saying, because there's so much. I mean, we'll go into some smaller details because there's a bunch of different suggestions and stuff of why they would go here. But there's so much mystery and intrigue. Like, they start approaching the town, and there's just this bell. They can just hear this bell ringing, and as they get closer and closer, it gets louder and louder. And, like, the whole place is deserted. It looks fucking destroyed. There's fucking giant fucking rocks destroying everywhere. You just walking in like, what happened? Where is everybody? There's so much. It's in that first chapter alone. There's just like, it's so fucking cool, man. So like, I wouldn't want to skip the first chapter. But I did railroad a little bit because, I mean, going back, we'll go into this more in detail, but I just decided that, like, they're a group of starting out adventurers. I'm going to choose the one about Morak Urgrey, which we'll get into that here in a little bit more. That, like, you know, he's always got quests and stuff. Like, adventurers want to go there because he's got some lucrative quests and stuff for you. Like, yeah, that'll draw him in. We'll just go with that. But there are some other options in there that might play for some very interesting changes and alterations occurring in chapter 1 that we'll debate that more when we start going through chapter 1, but you know, I might do that a little differently. However, what I also might change would be the third encounter. Now, again, spoilers, obviously. It's going to happen a lot in here. But the first thing you kind of encounter when you get there is a bunch of goblins. A bunch of goblins are pretty much looting this bitch dry. After the goblins, you have a run-in with the Zentarims, is what I call them. I don't know if it is a different pronunciation, but mostly they will just be referred to as the Black Network, because that's pretty much what the party referred to them as, because they were given both names, but the Black Network is the only one they remembered throughout the rest of the party, or throughout the rest of the campaign. So much to the point when I said the names Zentarims, they were just like, who is that? It's like, the peep? Okay. So they become a major part in this, so I definitely like them showing up because it creates this great moral dilemma, but we'll get more into that later in chapter 1. But the orcs immediately after that, like the next day kind of thing, the orcs showing up, that just seemed like a little overkill. It just seemed like we're going from situation to situation. That one seems a little weird. Now, it's kind of cool because there is an option in here about the elves and stuff, and like it's like, oh, it's supposed to show them that, like, oh, the elves are really a problem in here. They really have a problem with anyone going in their woods and whatnot. That could lead to some interesting situations. And I also do enjoy the part where it's just, you can have this situation to where when this horde of orcs is just running straight towards town and whatnot, and you're trying to do something to stop them from coming in and whatnot. Like, you can have that awesome moment where someone rolls a perception check and be like, oh, you know, like you're like, you can tell the difference between you know, maybe like anger and aggression and terror, or, you know, like you've killed a couple people in your days, you know, as a beginning adventurer, and you can definitely see the fear in someone's eye before they're about to die. These orcs aren't running to invade you. You can tell that they're running from something. You can have that oh shit moment, like this amount of orcs are scared of something. What the fuck are they running from? You know, you can have that great moment from that. But I don't know. I might do that scene a little bit differently because it feels like too much after like, oh, we're invaded by the Black Network. Oh, now orcs are invading us. Okay, now, you know, it feels a little too much at that point. So I might have a situation where, I don't know, maybe it's when they're sleeping because it's supposed to happen the next morning. So it might be a situation where they sneak in to the encampment. Maybe they don't. Oh, they usually bring up the drawbridge after the Black Network show up. That's the funny part of that chapter, but we'll get that into chapter 1. But they sneak in and like, oh, they try to assassinate you in your sleep or something, and maybe you keep one alive and you question, they can be like, oh, the elves and shit, the elves are a problem. They pushed us in here, so we try to take it for our own or something. There might be some other way I go about it. So I kind of want to keep it, but I also want to kind of nix it at the same time. But again, I do just something about that moment when they're running and you can see the fear in their eyes is just. It's a great oh shit character moment. But anyways, besides that, everything else is pretty straightforward about chapter 1. Chapter 2, I did some major railroading in chapter 2. I'm not even gonna hold you. So if you go with the Morak Urgrey option, or just in general if he's alive by the end of chapter 1, and you're just like, hey, I hear you got quests, you got any quests? And you know, at the moment it's like, yeah, kind of dry based on quests based off the situation just happened. My bad. But we have a bunch of dead people here. You can go tell their relatives that live in other locations about them. It's kind of what happens with that. And so there's 3 locations. There's Brine Shander, Golden Fields, and Tribor. Now, I did not give 3 options. I decided 1. For 2 reasons. One, it's the same thing that will happen later to where it's just like, you know, I want to explore all the options. Like if you're playing like Fallout and you're just like, I could follow the main storyline, but like I want to see everything that could happen. It was kind of one of those situations to where it's like the other locations is not long enough for when you get into the into Zephyros. I think his name is Zephyros is Tower. Like the only place that is a long enough journey and travel to where you'll see every situation is Brine Shander. Now, of course, you could just make it so no matter where you go, every situation will occur. That's fair. But also, I mean, as someone who read the, I haven't read all of them yet, but the person who's read through the Crystal Shards, you know, the Drit Stewardin books, I saw Brine Shander, and I was like, yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, where else are we going? Of course we're going to Brine Shander. 10 towns? Of course we're going to 10 towns. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So, you know. So in the future, I'd probably give them the option for all 3, but just like, I had just such a crazy, like, it just, inspiration just came to me when I was reading about the attack on Brine Shander section of chapter 2. I was just thinking about like this epic, like they're trying, like splitting the group into 3 parties, splitting up with NPCs and whatnot. Like someone stays at the gate to try to stop the frost giants from breaking in, you know, trying to hold back their advance from busting through the gates and coming in. Going up to the north side where like a group of orcs and snow wolves or wargs or whatever have broken through and are trying to kill civilians and stuff, and you defend the civilians. People go into the south side where there's a bunch of frost giants and they're all hurling fucking rocks into the town to fucking weaken it up and get some casualties and stuff before they siege. And you bring the ranged people down there and you start shooting them down. Like, I envisioned like a whole Helm's Deep fucking battlefield going on in Brine Shander. I was just like, we're going there. we're fucking going there. But I'm sure I could come up with, because the situation in Goldfields did occur, which will happen later in chapter 5, when we get to chapter 5 in the story, to where I did run through that scenario. So there is defenses that could occur, and chapter 2 can come back later, but we'll get into that when we get to chapter 2. So I would give them the 3 options, and let them decide which one of those they would want to go to. A little bit of railroading I did there, but like, come on, man. You can't admit, first off, Brian Shander. I don't know if it's Bryn. I like to call it Brian. I don't know why. Brian Shander. Like, come on. Dritz, you can't say no to that, right? Come on now. Chapter 3. Now, Chapter 3 is a very open-ended chapter. Chapter 3 can either be the longest chapter in the entire game or the shortest chapter in the entire game, and anywhere in between. Because what I really like about Chapter 3 is that it's just like you have all this information, but you're left with the question of, the fuck do we do about that? You know what I mean? Because you realize, like, at first, you know, like, oh, giants attacked Nightstone. That's weird, but it's an isolated incident, so it's like, okay, you know, it's whatever. And then you kind of get a little clue from Zephyros that, like, oh, some weird giant shit's going on. Okay. But then you go immediately, like, a week or two later, and you're in Brian Shander. And all of a sudden, like, stuff that would never happen is occurring. Giants are trying to siege a huge fucking city. Like, probably even recognize that it's, like, way more than this giant force should even be able to think that it can take. But it's doing a good job destroying the city and trying to get into there, even though that they're stopped. So you realize, okay, giants are a problem, guys. Like, giants are destroying cities and stuff. Like, this is not isolated anymore. This is, like, occurring. What do we do to stop them? You know, like, that's the question. Like, where do we go? Like, how do we do about this? So you can leave it. Like, I don't know if I would do this or not. I don't know where I'd go with this, because I read through all of Chapter 3, which is fucking massive, by the way. I was driving up to a different state to visit family. I think I wasn't driving, but I was in the car. Someone else was driving to go visit family for, like, Thanksgiving or something, and I was just pouring through, reading everything. I read the entirety of this book, which, I mean, you have to do if you're a DM anyways, but I still did it. and I was just going through Chapter 3, and I was just thinking, like, oh, I could do a little thing about this. It would talk about this place. It's like, oh, I could do something about that, and what have you. And I wonder the merits of, you know, maybe having ideas of just, like, telling, like, you know, because at the end of Chapter 2, I kind of give them a map of the place. I printed out a map of the place, and I had to blank out places that either don't exist in this campaign, or, like, wouldn't be on the map, or were, like, major areas that they were going to go later. So they couldn't be like, oh, I got to find this place. There it is. Because they weren't supposed to know. So blanked out certain places, telling them, like, the places that I blacked out are pretty much places that either don't exist for this campaign, because it was a map I got online of this zone, or, like, you're not supposed to know about. Like, your character wouldn't know about. Like, it wouldn't be on a map. No one on the map would know that, oh, this is the location of this place. So, you know. But so they have a map, and so, you know, they have this huge fucking map, this giant fucking place, tons and tons and tons and tons of places. So, like, obviously I feel like, you know, maybe they'll need a little push of, like, oh, maybe we should start here. But and maybe there's some merit to being like, okay, you know, this is a problem. Here you are on the map. What do you do about it? Where do you go? That depending on your group, that could be a good idea. That could be a bad idea. You never know. That could get very lost. But obviously have ideas of being like, okay, well, maybe this NPC will give them a little nudge if they're lost, or this will happen, or, you know, they'll go to this place and they'll be like, oh, no problems here, but actually we heard over here, you know, have ideas of how to give them direction. But maybe there's some merit to just being like, all right, especially if an experienced D&D group, be like, okay, this is the information you have, go. Do something about it. What are you gonna do? So, you know, kind of giving this thought of, like, where do we go? What do we do, man? Like, how do we even fix this problem? Maybe they can brainstorm ideas. Maybe, like, okay, maybe we go to this town and see if they've heard anything about it or whatnot, and then a side quest could open up from there, you know. So I railroaded it a little bit more. Again, beginning DM. So I just kind of wanted to make sure I didn't want to have to improv too much. I did improv quite a lot. Luckily, I've taken improv classes and stuff back in high school and college and stuff, so I'm a little better at it, and my brain does think really fast. But, you know, I was still a little nervous of, like, they were going to go somewhere, and I was just going to be like, I don't fucking even know. I was not planning on anyone visiting this location or anything like that, but I did have almost 100 pages of notes, so probably would have been fine. But so I wanted to follow this storyline because the first time I ran the campaign, someone was a half elf. So I was planning on playing on the whole, like, shunned by part of either elven society or human society, that kind of trope. The second time I was playing through, one of the main characters, one of the more experienced characters, was again a half elf. And in his storyline, he was adopted by a human male. So bad history with the male elf. So I was like, got it. So the sheriff in Brian Shander was going to recognize this person because they were going to know their father or whatnot. And it was kind of going to give them a cryptid message of like, I think you guys should go to this forest because, kind of looking at her because your destiny is waiting for you there. Give them a little cryptic message, not trying to be like, oh, hey, I know your father. Go check out your father and something, So I kind of gave them a nudge, so they start heading towards that location. Of course, the town that's buttressed right up against there has this crazy fucking history story in there that I incorporated as another side quest that they went on when they got there and whatnot, which we'll get into when we get to chapter 3. So I kind of railroaded a little bit because I thought up of all these cool side quests. I was like, I want to find a way to make them go to all those side quests, and then when they're done, chapter 4, Harshnag shows up and just be like, hey guys, I know you're a little lost on what to do. We go this way, which is what the book tells you to do. So, which brings us to chapter 4. Another railroading I did that I don't know if I would change or not. I've thought about it and I don't think that I would change this because it feels a little weird. What's supposed to happen is Harshnag, who doesn't like giants very much, at least evil giants. He finds pleasure in killing and putting down his evil brethren. He's a good giant. He's a hero. Harshnag's a famous character in Dungeons and Dragons. He's supposed to be like, hey, I recognize there's a problem. I don't remember if it says why he chooses them specifically, the adventures specifically. I don't remember what story I gave. Hopefully this will be something I'll be able to find out before we get to chapter 4, if I can remember what happened there. But pretty much it's just like, I specifically sent them to 2 locations to where they would find, at least to 1 location where they would find the ancient giant relics that the barbarian tribes, the it starts with a U. I have it in the back of the book here. I should be able to find it. Utgard, right? Utgard? Yes, Uthgard. The Uthgard. Barbarians of tribes all across the lands have taken these giant relics and usually hide them for whatever reasons and use them for like rituals and shit like that. Well, what's supposed to happen is Harshnag's supposed to be like, I don't know what to do about this, but I know that there's this ancient giant place. I know if it's a location, never been inside. But there's supposed to be this oracle to the giant god Amon, the Allfather of the giants, who kind of created all this mess, but we'll learn about that in chapter, when it kind of occurs, so whenever chapter that is. And you're supposed to go there, you're supposed to get in, and you're supposed to meet the ghost Elagos or whatever the fuck his name is, the cloud giant who was murdered there by his father. Is a whole thing. And he's supposed to tell you like, oh, you need these relics, so that, and with each relic, the whatever the fuck, the oracle will answer your questions and whatnot. So he's supposed to show up and be like, oh, okay, now we know what to do. Go find these relics, guys, and I'll stay here and chill. And when you leave, like, the cultists of the Green Dragon's supposed to show up and be like, hey, here's an airship, we'll take you around wherever you want to go. And I guess there's an option to be like, no, we're good. And they'll be like, all right, we'll see if you want it. Or to all of a sudden be driving around in an airship by cultists, which sounds cool. But it's just like, I don't know how I feel about that. It just feels kind of Deus Ex-y, kind of like, hey, here's your saving grace. Oh, how are we going to get around all these places? Here's an airship. Oh, we'll just happen to be here. It seems a little cheesy. And I didn't like the thought of, you go here, and it's like, oh, we don't have the shit we need. Go get the shit we need. I'll stay here. And then you go to the place, and they come back, and like, hey, we got it. Cool, you did it. Let's do this, you know. That felt a little silly to me, so Harshnag being a giant, I figured I'd switch it so that it's like, oh, he knows of the place, of the Oracle. He doesn't know how to get in there. He just knows the general location of where it's supposed to be, but we gotta go find it. But he also knows that you need certain relics. I think I only had made it like 3 or 4 relics that we need. And he's like, oh, you know, I see that you already have one. I can sense that the one is on you. We need to go get the other 2 or 3, however many the fuck it was. And they're on the way to the location. So you kind of pick them up as you get there, which also makes it so you can scale into the backside. So I had this whole scene where they were traveling through this very harsh winter, stormy mountain peaks and stuff, which makes it so, you know, you have to worry about things like heat and survival and whatnot, and also they have to climb up this sheer ice wall, and they have to find a way to do that. And at this level, a lot of, depending if you have a wizard or not, flying spells can be a little difficult, or having instant teleportation, so you kind of have to hand climb that bitch. I just thought of interesting ways to get the relics before you get into the location. so once you get there and it's like, hey, we came prepared. Yeah, we were to have the relics. We can ask the questions. So they didn't have to go find them. Okay, we found them. Now go all the way back. Okay, now we have them. Now we can do the thing that we came here originally to do. It feels a little like backtracky, and I didn't like that. I didn't care for that a whole lot. So that was a little bit more railroading that I did, and I don't think I would change that one, honestly. That one just feels a little. But then I would have to, well, I guess it could make them go to the grandfather tree anyways, but I had that be part of the, well, you're already in the woods, this is part of your trial kind of thing for the elven father situation, or mother, could be an elven mother, the leader of the elves there and whatnot. You know, I kind of circumvented that. Now, here's another thing that I kind of railroaded that I would change. Well, not railroaded, kind of opened up a little bit. But I would change it and keep it the same at the same time. So what you're supposed to do, chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, you only do one of those chapters and skip all the rest. I didn't agree with that at the time, because I was just like, again, like that Fallout syndrome, I want to discover the whole world. I want to see it all. I want to do it all, you know? So you're supposed to get information from the Oracle that one of the the giant lords that are terrorizing the town, they have these conches on them. You get a conch, you can use that to go to the storm, to the storm giants, the hall of the storm giants and whatnot. And so it's like they're all supposed to have one. So you just like, you get the names of them, you get what they are, and people, they choose one out of the 5 one out of the 5 types of giants to go hunt and skip all the rest. To me, I didn't really like that idea. And now knowing what I did for all those chapters, I very much don't like that idea. Now, the first one, the hill giant, I'd be okay with skipping. The hill giants is funny and it's very interesting, and there could be some very maybe negotiating. Maybe you can come up with some kind of agreement. Stuff doesn't have to end in bloodshed situation, which could be pretty cool. But if any of them had to be skipped, I'd be okay with that one. But I feel like potentially as an adventuring group, we'd be like, well, hill giants are easier. Let's just pick the hill giants. And I think that's one of the lightest of all the chapters anyways. So that one just didn't really sit right with me. You know what I mean? Because like the stone giants, like the whole building of the stone giants is really cool. There's a lot of different enemy types there. There's even a giant rock there. There's slimes there. There's tons of really cool enemies. There's shaman there holding up in there. The stone giants themselves have very specific campaign only abilities that they can kind of pause time. There's also like petrifying dirt and shit in there that they can try to shove you into. Like there's so much cool stuff. And also Caelithica, the stone giant queen, or lord or whatever, she's a Thane, isn't she? She's in the stone giant Thane. I have the enemies here. Hold on. This is important to me. It's not important to anyone else. Sorry. Yes, Thane. She's the Thane. It's the chief, the Thane, the Jarl, the Duke, and the Countess. Right. The Thane of the Stone Giants is like talking to this like creature, spirit, monster thing, but doesn't know. Thinks he's speaking to her gods. And is like writing an ancient dwarven script on this fucking pyramid stalactite thing that you can interact with that and stuff. Like, it's just so cool. With the Frost Giants, you have to find a way to get there because it's on its own isolated iceberg, just in the fucking out in the middle of nowhere in the frozen tundra sea. You have to like either hire a ship to go out there, or you have to like get Griffin training, which was a really fun event when we did, but we'll get to that chapter 7. To where you can learn to fly out there, and then once you get there, you can negotiate with adult white dragons that are kind of held captive there, and their babies are taken, which then creates an interesting moral dilemma with that. And then once you're done discovering there, all of a sudden the ship that has a bunch of frost giants shows up, and you have to figure like, oh fuck, they're all here. What do we do? The person we're looking for is on that fucking ship, but there's a bunch of them. What do we do? And that can create some really cool scenarios. The fire giants, first off, getting to the fire giants, there's the Yak folk village, to where they pretend, or at least I had them pretend like, oh, we're enslaved by them, you're here to help us, awesome. And then they drug you and chain you up, which created this amazing escape. Like, we got escape from captive side adventure that happened, which was really fucking cool. Some really fucking funny stuff happened. I can't wait to get to that. Chapter 8, we'll get there. And then they break down into there because the fire giant himself is creating this giant fucking ancient titan death machine that's gonna not only destroy dragons but destroy the whole fucking world. And you can see it being made, and you got to stop them, and it's this cool heated environment that also has environment stuff. Like, that's really fucking cool. Getting up into the cloud giants in the middle of the fucking swamp was really fucking cool. First you have to traverse there through the swampy territory, which can create very, very cool stuff. And we even had a very cool side campaign that we did as a side quest and switched DMs during that. Really cool stuff happened there, which can happen whenever, but that was also part of chapter 9. Then you have to get up into the cloud giant place, and you have to decide if you're going in stealthily, if you're just knocking down the front door. I even gave the cloud giants a really cool ability to be able to, because I had some really stealthy invisible units, so that they can control the wind and feel the gust of the wind, and they can tell when it's not forming right because there's something there, and so they can detect stealth units that way. Really cool. But also you have to deal with some moral dilemmas and issues, because there's like children cloud knights, so that brings up a very cool moral dilemma. There's torturing of not a chromatic, but a metallic dragon happening, and you like try to free the dragon. And then I created this really cool boss fight where Countess Sensuri had like 4 different forms or whatnot that would happen, and it had cool cinematics for them and stuff. And like there's this part where you can see how she like enslaved and like tortured and recreated copies of the bird creatures that are there. Like so much cool shit can happen in every fucking chapter, just to be like, choose one. Like, the chance of you replaying this slim, and the length it takes to get through a campaign, chance of you ever coming back to this story is very slim. So I was like, I don't want to see just one and hope that maybe I play it again someday. I want them to see it all. Now that got a little daunting. All 5 of them got very daunting. It kind of got a little repetitive after the 3rd one. And it felt like it trudged a little bit, not too much to where it was like, yeah, I want to do that again, my bad, mistake, but it got a little gummy. So I think the solution to that, what I would do differently in hindsight, is so anyways, Um, what I did instead of each of them having a conch, I made it so like, in some kind of event or whatever, there was a conch. Either one conch or they all individually had a conch. I can't remember what I had the oracles say. But after the sundering of the ordning and whatnot, which we'll get into once we start getting into the story, they like shattered their conscience, being like, fuck this, they don't need this anymore, we're gonna rule. And so they all had shards of a conch. So you had to collect their conch shards and fuse them all together magically to recreate a conch, to which you can then use to teleport to the storm giants. That is originally originally it's just supposed to be the full conch, but I switched it to that. I think what I would do in the future is I would do the same thing. It is shards. However, you only need 3 of the shards. I think I settled on 3. So you will skip something, unfortunately. Which, I mean, you can do all 5 if you want. It worked. It feels a little grindy on the kind of the last 2, but you can maybe find a way to refresh it, to maybe do other stuff or whatnot. You can maybe find a way to keep it fresh. Just the way I did it got a little grindy. Definitely got a little grindy. So you can do all 5 if you want, which also makes it so you can get 5 levels packed into there and whatnot. But what I think I would just make it be like, you need 3 of the shards, so you can choose between the 3. So yes, you won't get to see all of the really cool stuff. You'll probably miss 1 or 2 maybe really cool events, but overall you at least get to see 3. It doesn't get too bogged down, and the group gets to choose, like, okay, which ones do we want to see. So I think that's a good compromise to that. I feel like it's a little bit better than just skipping 4 chapters and say you just skip 2. I think that's a lot better. And then what else? Is there anything else that besides obviously the final chapter with the giant potions and whatnot? I think the only other thing was chapter 11. It was the last kind of railroady event. Well, I did something bad in chapter 10, which was a DM mistake, but we won't get to that until we get to chapter 10, which is going to be a while. But there was a real bit of railroading mistake in there that I made that I would take back because it sucked. Because it was more because I was just like, oh, this is such a cool moment. How do you guys not remember this? Oh no. So it was like a twist I was waiting for forever, and none of them remembered it. So I was like, fuck. But anyways, chapter 11, Kraken shows up. Spoiler alert, Kraken shows up. And you're not really supposed to interact with the Kraken a whole lot. And like, it's pretty much like, oh, because I mean, you're supposed to be a bunch of level 9s. You're not gonna fucking fight the fucking Kraken and live to tell the tale. So it's supposed to be like, oh, if they don't figure it out or shit goes wrong, the Kraken's really only interested in King, in the Storm Giant King. You just gotta take the King and waddle away. But my characters at that level were like level 18, 19. So they said, fuck it, we're going to kill. So I was like, fuck it, we're going to kill the Kraken. Well, to kill the Kraken is a really hard feat. So pretty much they get it close to death and then it retreats, kind of thing. But I was like, they're going to fight a fucking Kraken. Which actually, I don't remember when it started, so hopefully I can find through my notes and through watching videos where I talked about bits and pieces of it during World of Warcraft. I could find out where it started happening, but there was like a running joke about a Kraken the whole time. And this was before they knew that there was a group called the Kraken Society. This was before like anything like that. Somehow we just got onto Kraken, and the whole time I was just like, right, oh shit, there's gonna be a Kraken. I don't remember how we got to there. I think it might have been when we started like trying to get a boat, swim to certain locations or something like that. I think Kraken jokes started happening. I don't remember how. But then when I literally said the Kraken Society, when they got to chapter 11, they were just like, Like, is that did you actually put that into the campaign? I was like, nope. They're just like, holy shit. So that was funny. But yeah, I wanted them to fight it, so that was a little bit of railroading there. But like, would I do it again? I think so, but I think it would be a much, obviously they wouldn't be as high of a level because I would do things differently, so they would lose a couple levels, so they probably maybe only be like 14, 15, 16 on this point, I would imagine. So, you know, it would probably be a tough battle, so obviously they wouldn't be able to kill it, and they'd probably have to use parts of the ship to their advantage, you know, give themselves a boon like harpoon turrets, or, you know, the king helping out and whatnot to try to get it to flee or whatnot. But yeah, I think that is all the changes to the storyline and all the differences, different things that I added or changed up or whatnot. So how we're gonna do this, as these are gonna be titled something involving Storm King's Thunder campaign or whatever. I don't know if Tale of the Destorians is going to be in there every single time or not. I do not know. I'll figure that out as I start making them, but I got some time because I need to get all the shit I had talked about in this long ass video. I don't know how long the video is going to be. It will really depend on the chapter and the session and what happened. But the way I'm going to do it is it's going to be like, you know, Storm King's Thunder, Chapter 1, Session 1. Chapter 1, Session 2, Chapter 1, Session 3, Chapter 1, Session 4, Chapter 2, Session 1, you know. I imagine it's going to be something like that. And then maybe they'll have titles or something attached to that, like Session 1, The Great Upheaval, because maybe that's what the chapter is called, or Goblin Problems or some shit, you know. Like, I'll find maybe a title for them, who knows. But that's pretty much how it's going to go. We're going to go in potentially each session, so we can have shorter videos, and it's not just 12 videos of 12 chapters, and some are like 2 hours long or some shit like that, because, you know, sessions can last a very long time, and a lot of stuff can happen and what have you. So I think I'm going to break it up into what either the sessions were or what I think they were, based off of either how the chapter is grouped. Like in Chapter 1 you have goblins, that could be Session 1. Session 2 is the Black Network showing up. Session 3 is the orcs. Section 4, or yes, Session 4 is going to the Dripping Caves and rescuing the townspeople and figuring out what to do from there and whatnot, and, you know, etc., etc. So just break it up into those sessions. So it's some are shorter videos, some are longer videos, but none of them are hopefully an hour plus long. So yeah. But that means I'm going to have to research not only my own notes personally and looking up stories of what happened, but I'm also going to have to read through the chapters again and whatnot, and remember what could happen, what outcomes were possible, what they skipped, etc. So I got some research to do and whatnot, but I don't mind, because I really love this story. If that wasn't evident, and how excited I get in recounting Chapter 2 and recounting chapters 5 through 9, you know, all the little side quests and the little stuff that I had in there. It was a lot of fun. I really love the story. I really love the story that we created. So welcome everybody to the Tale of the Destorians. What does that mean? What is the Destorians? You gotta wait for Chapter 3 to find that out. So I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready for an adventure, because I sure as hell am, and I can't wait to tell it, and for you to all join us on the amazing story that is Storm King's Thunder. So thank you all so very much for joining me. I'll see you in Chapter 1.